Hi everyone, Amanda here. So the reading you're about to see is for both Sagittarius and Aquarius. It's a bit of a conversation between them and they're helping one another here. The energy that's coming through is really like big. It's a lot and it has taken me a few days to fully digest it. And as the days progressed after I did the initial recording of the reading, these epiphanies just kept hitting me and I was like, oh, okay, that's what this means. So you're gonna hear from a little bit of a future self. That's me, hi. Clarifying some of the things that I am saying in the initial recording, and I'm hoping that that will give you the fullest picture as it has continued to unfold for me. You know, sometimes it takes the human digestive system a little time to fully assimilate some of these concepts that are coming through. So Sag, Aquarius, everybody else, thanks for being here and I hope you enjoy. And I was watching one of my favorite tarot readers on YouTube, Opal Oracle, and in the latest Virgo reading, I believe it was, she said at the very end, she just looks at the camera and goes, Aquarius and Sagittarius. And that was it. And then she said, okay, thank you, Virgo. And I was like, okay, I gotta do this reading, which makes sense. We are approaching an Aquarius full moon, the second Aquarius full moon in this season by the time I'm recording this reading. So I'm very curious to see what's going on here. I'm also doing all Kim Crans today. I have never used Kim Crans until recently, and it's really fun. I love her decks. Okay, the horse just came out. Interesting. I'm feeling Sagittarian energy big time for the horse. I was going to pull an animal for one for Sagittarius and one for Aquarius to see where each of them are coming from and to sort of personify them. So the horse is coming out and I'm feeling Sag. Let's see if that's true. I haven't even told you the image that's coming through. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's see who is here for Aquarius. It was 2 cards. I want 1, please. 1 representation of Aquarius. Whoa. The shark. Both movers. This is movement energy big time here. And it's so funny that we have an air and a fire sign, and these are in this deck represented as earth and water. I like. Okay, so the image that's coming to me for this conversation, this relationship between Aquarius and Sagittarius, which by the way, in astrology, they sextile one another. They're 2 signs away, right? 60 degrees. It's a sextile. It's a really positive flow of energy between the 2 of them. They work well together. So I'm excited for this conversation. I think it'll be perhaps pretty helpful for us, for all of us in some way, but especially Aquarians and Sagittarians. So the image that's coming to me is a compass, and I'm getting both kinds of compass. The compass that is north, south, east, west, helping you find your direction, and then the kind of compass that works in mathematics to help you draw a perfect circle and to help you map distances, like equidistant radiuses from the center. So there's something really fascinating that Sag and Aquarius are bringing us about direction and finding the direction and like map making. They're working together to help us find the direction, and especially with these animals coming out, which are very directionally focused. You know, the horse wants to move, wants to be free to move, and then the shark, of course, never stops moving. I'm getting this, you know, I was really feeling like Sagittarius holds the directional compass and Aquarius holds the mathematical compass. And that's how they're working together to navigate a situation. And I'm now seeing the shark coming through as Aquarius, the shark sort of circling the way the compass, you know, anchors into the center and then circles. Okay. Something about the perimeter or the radius, understanding the radius of something. Maybe I'm even talking about like an orbit. Okay. Okay, hi. Hindsight Amanda here, offering some clarity. So it hit me, you know, I was a little bit bothered after I did the initial recording that the shark and the horse didn't speak more than they did. And as I was talking a little bit more with this shark energy, it hit me that while sharks can circle, they are one directional. They move in one forward direction. Even if they're turning, they are always moving forward. They can't stop. They can't swim backwards. They're just moving forward, typically. Okay, that's how we're thinking about sharks in terms of the energy they're bringing. I'm sure there's lots of shark variations out there, and some scientists could prove me wrong maybe, but thinking of the shark as a one-directional being in contrast with the horse feels like it's maybe urging the Aquarian energy in this conversation to loosen up its movements a little bit, to free things up, to get away from one-track thinking or like a one-track mind or a singular focus, and open up the circles a little bit so that there's more dynamic movement available, and the ways you are thinking, talking, moving through the world are less linear. Again, here's the Aquarian energy coming through as very linear in its track. The horse is coming in with a little bit more wildness. You know, even in this card, its mane is blowing in the wind, and that wind energy brings, for me, thoughts of like multiple directions. You know, when the wind is whipping around you, it whips one way and then it whips another, and it's changeable, it's flexible, it's malleable. And perhaps that's what Sagittarian energy is asking of Aquarius at this time. Again, with Saturn and Aquarius, Saturn can tend to offer us limitations in a way that we can interpret as fixed, rigid, one-track mind, narrow focus. And that Sagittarian energy, I think, is offering a little bit of a nuance of understanding that opens things up, opens up the mind in particular. Let's look into tarot. Let's go to the wild unknown. Yeah, the King of Swords, right? Front and center, coming in with some sort of communication, some sort of truth. It does sort of feel like that with this Aquarius full moon energy, that there's some sort of clarity coming in pretty clearly and helping us get us moving in some way. So, Sag, Aquarius, what is this conversation about? What are y'all doing? Let's find out. Yeah. Big time. You're drawing circles. Circles, cycles. The World card talks about a profound moment of completion or ending that spurs you into some sort of new cycle. It is a death and birth moment, you know, this transitional space between what is ending and what is beginning. All of that is contained in the World card, and the World card can hold all of that because it's got the perspective, the wider view. I'm thinking about the fact that Saturn, this is a card of Saturn, is in Aquarius. Aquarius helps us see the larger perspective on things, sort of zooms out to include everything that's happening and hold, bear all of that. And that's what it feels like is here in the World card. There's some sort of cycle that's ready to end so that we can move in a new direction, so that we can navigate in a particular way. It's interesting that we've got this, the circles coming up here, because there is something about getting out of moving in circles, you know, like if something is cyclical or repeating in your life, continuing to spiral in this particular directional way. You know, if you don't move the mathematical compass, if you don't change the angle and move it out to expand it or contract it, I suppose, but if you want to expand your circles, you've got to change the angle so that you can draw a wider circumference. Otherwise, you're just tracing the same cycle, the same circle, the same energy over and over and over. And I think that's part of maybe what the truth here, what the King of Swords is bringing us, is the clarity we need to see and maybe even communicate about the cycles that we've been in and how we are ready to move out of them, to stop circling the same energy over and over and over. Ready to bust out. There's a quote I saw, so again, I've been sort of playing out the sleuthing of this reading for a few days now. And I was still just like really trying to understand the World card and sitting with it. And I happened upon, there's a person named Carrie Hone, Hohne, who interprets the I Ching hexagrams. And I was reading what that person wrote about hexagram 21. And they wrote a quote that says, experience can keep showing you the same thing until illusion is transformed into clarity. And this is what this feels like. This sort of feels like this Aquarian illusion of the same thing. It's like experience will keep showing you the same cycle and the same lesson until that illusion is broken. Essentially, until you see what you need to see there, finally, in full clarity. And then the cycle doesn't have to continue and continue to repeat. Then you can begin to color outside of that line. Okay, what else? Sagittarius and Aquarius. Nice. Wow. I mean, I could feel the positive flow happening between these energies. And to me, these cards are really bringing the positive flow. There's that circle energy again with the 10 of Cups. And then we have the 6 of Pentacles. Something is budding, ready to bloom here. The 6 of Pentacles talks about balance. It talks about equity, of investment, making sure that your investments are giving back to you in kind, that there is a clear exchange of very tangible, palpable energy, and that it's equal, that everybody is benefiting. Because that's when you get the 10 of Cups. When everyone is benefiting, there's this beautiful interconnection, emotional interconnection that happens when the physical material interconnection is reciprocal. Do you see that reciprocity and that exchange happening? It almost looks like a web being woven, or again, it's bringing me back to the compass. Compasses and protractors, you know, like all of these angles and interconnected lines and the grid that they form when they are balanced, symmetrical, reciprocal. What does the King of Swords have to say? Balance. there's the sword of justice coming down right in the center, asking for balance. You know, we've got some planets heading into Libra. This is the card of Libra, and Libra, of course, can see both sides of something and prefers the middle because it understands that there's wisdom there and that there's balance to be held in the center of two extremes. It's not to say that extremes aren't useful and necessary, but there is magic in the balance in the center. It's like both of these cats are taking equal responsibility in holding the world, holding the world. They are sharing the responsibility of recognizing the cycles that are completing and ushering us into the next cycles. That's the world. They hold the larger perspective together so that it doesn't end up as Atlas. Interesting that we're talking about maps and map making. Atlas holding the entire world on their shoulders. No, we can do this in a way that's interconnected, in a way that is reciprocal and shares the load. And that brings much more emotional satisfaction, balance, and happiness to everybody that is involved in these exchanges. Okay, so the Father of Swords here, the King of Swords, says justice, balance. This is a call for balance. We've got the Son of Cups here, bringing some sort of emotional energy into the discussion. And then the Three of Wands. I sort of want to see if there's someone on the other side of the Son of Cups. Yeah, I could kind of feel this. It's the Daughter of Swords. They're wanting to have this conversation. This King of Swords is sort of overseeing this conversation here between these two energies, cups and swords, emotions and the intellect, the heart and the mind. Again, coming together in balance. Decisions being made from the head and the heart in kind. To move things forward, the Three of Wands, into a new future. You know, this is like an opening. It's an opportunity to plan differently and to consider how things could look in a different way, in a new way. You know, if we're exiting old cycles and expanding the circle to start a new cycle or a new series of experiences or something like that, it means we are on the precipice of passing through into something else, into a new future, a new vision perhaps for the future. Okay. I think there's a little bit of a call to towards maturity here that I'm feeling. Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn calls us to move, Sag, in a way that is balanced between what we know and what we feel. And that is collectively beneficial for all, Aquarius. And maybe even, you know, revolutionary, also Aquarian. Let's look deeper into the World card and see what cycles we are ending and what new cycles we have the potential to begin. Yeah, ending, death, judgment. This is death and rebirth, by the way. This is exactly the energy. Intense cards. A really intense moment here. We're literally seeing the bird as a deceased carcass and then the bird resurrected, coming to life again. Between the two of them, as you can imagine, the portal, if you will, or the opening, the doorway between death and new life. While they are two sides of the same coin, you don't easily pass between them. Like, this is something that's been coming through to me really clearly lately when I pull this card for myself or when I pull the death card, especially in conjunction with one another. It's a moment of being in that tunnel, being in that the intensity of that transition. Like, thinking about the idea of reincarnation. Can you imagine a soul passes away from a certain incarnation in this lifetime? The body is past. An entire life that soul has lived is no longer there. And then, like, what if we are imagining that reincarnation is what happens? Let's just go with that. What is that transition between one lifetime ending and then another one beginning? Like, how do you go from this complete evolution and journey and like fullness to being a brand new baby again, and like still carrying all of the lessons of that previous incarnation, but essentially starting completely fresh, almost like blank and oblivious? It's like going backwards in a way, but I'm trying to describe like almost like a wormhole effect where you go in one end. It seems like they are far apart, but you go in one and you're immediately in the other. It's like that. That's the energy that's here. Can we learn more about what's on the other side? Yeah, Two of Wands, some sort of doorway pointing us to a specific opening. It's almost like the two is pointing us to the three. It's trying to sort of send us, the energy is trying to send us through what looks like a pretty small opening, a pretty tight squeeze. Like, come on, like go. We're trying to push you down this particular track. Interesting that, again, the compass, the directional focus, like we're trying to point you towards a specific direction. That is as yet unknown. Here we have the Priestess. For some reason, all of this discussion about the World card and these portals and focusing us into the doorway feels very much like, oh, and I just realized that I drew basically the same shape for the compass that is the drawing tool. Interesting. It's like if Aquarius holds this drawing tool and is interested in distances and radiuses and understanding the cycles, the overall cycles, then I think here with the High Priestess, I feel Sagittarius coming in as the High Priestess, which is funny because it feels to me like death, rebirth, the Two of Wands, like this is all Aquarian energy in this conversation. That's how I'm feeling it. That Aquarian energy is sort of like, yeah, I'm recognizing, again, Saturn, because Saturn is in Aquarius, it's like I'm recognizing the larger cycles of things in this like moment in time, Saturn, this moment in time that we are in. That's what Aquarius is bringing to the conversation. And then it's almost like Sag is coming into the conversation and saying like, yeah, that's true. And do you know anything about where we're actually going? Because again, remember in my meditation image, Sag is holding the compass, the directional compass, north, south, east, west, and everything in between. And so Sag is sort of saying like, yeah, that's nice. And this is here we have the priestess as Sag holding the crystal ball, aka the compass, and saying yes, but the direction is as yet unknown. It's somewhere deep inside of us. Deep inside, we can feel that there is a particular direction, that there's an opening happening for us to create a direction in the future that is more balanced, reciprocal, and beneficial for all, but we don't know what that is yet. We don't know what that is, and we can't see that quite yet. So maybe what is needed to find that directional focus is whatever this conversation is that the King of Swords is overseeing. Whatever this justice energy is bringing us, which could be, again, when I think Mercury ingresses into Libra is the next move. Tower on the bottom of the deck. It's just absolute intensity. Really intense in that transition. You know, the transition between like death and rebirth, that is a Tower transition as I'm feeling it here. Okay, that's it for these cards. Let's look at, let's turn to the archetypes. Yeah, oh, this is interesting in the spread. You could probably see this if I'll like get it together to show you a picture of what I'm seeing, but it's almost as if the priestess is looking over to Mercury here, looking over to the King of Swords, or again, Sag and Aquarius. You know, looking over to the King of Swords because that's what the priestess is waiting for. Like, here I am holding the compass. What I need now is this other kind of compass, that point, that sharp edge, that tool that can draw, that can show something visually. Mercury can show you clearly. I know I contain the answer here. I know I contain the wisdom, the secret, as it were, you know, but it is not yet revealed to me. I am waiting for the clarity. I'm waiting for the clear signal, the clear sign, the clear communication, something to come in and go, aha, okay. Something to drop in and bring that clarity. It's almost like this is the crystal ball that we can both hold. And that we are both Aquarius and Sagittarius seeking. Let's turn to, just to continue the Kim Kranz thread, let's turn to her archetypes deck and see if we can understand the big picture here. Okay, here we go. This conversation between, wow, okay, Sag and Aquarius. We have the father archetype. I love how we have these mirroring images. Plus, here's the Father of Swords as she's created in this deck. Wow. rich, rich, rich. You know, I'm new to the Archetypes deck, so I would love to just read a little bit about what she has to say. Let me find it. Alongside the mother, the father resides in the central axis of the archetypal family. So there's that compass, and the drawing that I created here from the meditation, it is about the central axis. It's like everything moves out from the center. Like I was seeing those concentric circles. Concentric, is that the right? I don't think that's the right word. The circles not intersecting, non-intersecting circles that are just expanding out. Those cycles that are expanding outward, but they expand out from the center. So this is one of the centers, the central axis of this energy. The father archetype embodies both light and dark aspects of the masculine. Okay, he's infinitely dynamic and complex. His energy is strong and regal, embodying such virtues as honesty, wisdom, loyalty. Absolutely. This Aquarian energy, honesty, wisdom, loyalty. Let's see. Yet, ironically and simultaneously, the father is often absent, literally or emotionally. Through absence or action, the father eventually reveals that he is neither king or god, but human being with many flaws and wounds. He is both the guardian and one who leaves us to the wolves, here yet gone, the champion and the failure. The father can never resolve or escape this duality. It is inherent in the archetype itself. Witnessing the father's limitations allows the child to grow beyond this family. Interesting that the family here, I think in this reading, is being applied as the cycle, to grow beyond the cycle and out into the world. Again, death to this cycle that is repeating, and expand, grow out into a new cycle, out into the world, literally being reborn out of an old cycle where this particular archetype is the center, and being reborn into a new world, into a world where you are one of many. This is what this feels like to me. I am one of many, and all benefit from my presence. I mean, this feels like the way that masculinity has been this center point of our culture in the West, at least. But in many places globally, it's like that the masculine, so to speak, that energy is revered, uplifted, glorified, sort of king above all, and is the central axis. Maybe part of this conversation is understanding the dualities that are present there and all of the complexities. And what is needed in order to bring balance to what has otherwise been skewed into one perspective or centered on the male perspective as it has come to be. We're expanding out into a new cycle with maybe a new center. The father archetype, no longer the central crucial unit of the family, but there is something else. There's something more multiplicitous, more whole. Interesting. I'm not going to take it because too many cards are flipping out, but we do have the king and the judge. Feels pretty spot on with everything we just said. Okay, my whole ass mind is being blown by this reading. So earlier at some point in this reading, I didn't know the definition of concentric, and I emphasized because in my head I thought it meant intersecting circles, and I was saying non-intersecting. So what I was actually talking about was concentric circles. So concentric circles are circles that share the same center point. So if we changed the angle of this compass and drew another circle around the perimeter, it would be a concentric circle because they both share the same center point. But it was like a slip of the tongue that was pretty insightful because I said non-concentric circles. I looked up the opposite of concentric circles and got eccentric circles. So eccentric circles may not share the same center point. They might be intersecting, they might be kind of going all over the place, but they don't necessarily share the same center point. I don't know, it sort of feels to me like Aquarius wants to move in this like concentric way where it's sort of like, okay, sure, we'll go on to a new cycle, but I'm anchored. I'm hunkered down, gripping onto the same center point, and I'm essentially going to repeat about the same cycle, the same sort of energy, because you're holding on to the same center point. You know, it's like not much is changing if you're fixed to that center. And I think this Sagittarian energy is coming in and going, there is so much more beyond that. Like, I love that the opposite of what I'm talking about with concentric circles would be in mathematics called eccentric, like eccentric or eccentric. I think Sag is offering Aquarius a dose of eccentricity or eccentricity and saying, hey, listen, we can shift a little bit. We can veer from that norm a little bit, which is interesting because, you know, like it's really bringing up this Aquarian dichotomy for me of like the way Aquarius is often associated with Uranus, and Uranus is that planet of like cultural revolution and change and going against the grain. And yet there is this Saturnian part of Aquarius that is really resistant to that and can be incredibly singularly focused and one directional. So I think the Saturn Uranus drama that's been playing out all year and will continue to play out, the Saturn in Aquarius square Uranus and Taurus, this aspect that keeps happening is essentially bringing up this energy that I'm sensing in this reading between the tension between concentric movements that are expanding, but expanding from this one singular same center point, and then the encouragement from Uranus to get a little eccentric and to draw outside of the lines, to say yes and instead of either or. And this makes me think of a spirograph.
Amazing. These are just a few of the designs that can be made with Spirograph by Kenner. Change wheels, change colors, make a million multicolored designs, each so beautiful your eyes won't believe what your hands have done. Spirograph by Kenner. So much fun you'll never want to stop.
So is this reading actually trying to get us to draw spirographs? Like to allow the intersection and interconnectedness of multiple circles at the same time to be like the art and the web and the strength that comes from all of that interconnectedness? Because to me, again, this like concentric expansion happens with one compass in this one particular way, and that's all we are doing. Whereas that spirograph is a little wild. And if our expansion is more along the lines of a spirograph, then we're going to end up with this like incredibly artful, non-linear, interconnected design that's wholly unique, difficult to repeat, and finds its strength and beauty and uniqueness in its interconnected qualities. I mean, there might even be something here where Sag is sort of like, hey, Aquarius, expand your circles. Like maybe it's that simple. Just expand your circles. See if there's another archetype that wants to speak to this Sagittarius Aquarius conversation. And it's interesting too that Saturn is often compared as, or like looked at as the father archetype. The father, the daddy of the zodiac. Saturn in Aquarius. This is an Aquarius reading. Okay, good. The one. The oneness of all. This seems to be, you know, again, we have the Father of Swords talking about the father needing to bring a very clear point home about the imbalances present here in this archetype, and balancing the head and the heart in order to repair those imbalances in this way. And then the priestess feels like this energy is holding the one, the archetype of the one. So let's look at that. Non-duality, beautiful, beautiful, come on. That is the transition from binary to non-binary, from duality to non-duality. Non-duality, our ability to experience this archetype firsthand is limited. It comes in brief and potent moments that we are left to savor for a lifetime. The one is both the energy that unites all living beings and our capacity to sense this intimate union. This archetype eludes us most of our lives, appearing as a concept in a distant galaxy. Yet when we are in the midst of its power, a solemn reverence falls across the land. We glimpse ourselves in the vastness of all consciousness and are neither small nor large within that field. We are neither important or unimportant. All duality fades away and we are left with what is. The precious knowing that life is a gift and we are both the giver and the receiver. Okay? From a dual, binary, limited perspective that does not lead to reciprocity and benefit for all, into a new horizon, a new future, an opening to start a new cycle, to move, because ultimately that's what this reading wants us to do. That's what Aquarius and Sag want us to do, is to move towards a new understanding of life. Death to the patriarchy. This is the judgment. This is what the potential that is present in the cards today to be reborn into. I mean, look. Circles, 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 openings, openings, openings. Okay, and then thinking about this father archetype as that center, that like fixed center point in, I'll just speak for the American psyche, you know, like this father archetype as this center point that sort of keeps us in this one kind of cycle. I'm going to talk a little bit about a quote that I heard from Palace at 9ofwands.com, 9 of wands, I think with periods in between, on Instagram. Anyway, this person, Palace, is an incredible astrologer and is giving a talk at the Fresh Voices in Astrology Summit, August 28th, 29th. I hope you see this in time and can hop over there because it is free if you watch live on those days. And Palace, you can also purchase it in retrospect if you see this later. But Palace is giving a talk, I believe, Sunday morning, the 29th. And it's called, I wrote it down here, it's called Living Astrological Cycles, Phases, or Living Astrology, something like that, Astrological Cycles, Phases, and Hours. Okay, so already cycles, here we go. Palace is speaking to this. But in an interview about what their talk's going to be about, they said the cycles of Saturn includes all of the other cycles within it. So I really can't wait to watch this talk so that I can understand what the heck they're talking about, but it feels really applicable to this reading somehow. So join me in watching Palace's talk on cycles and astrology, because if Saturn is actually the thing that contains all other cycles within it, it's not the center point, it's the perimeter. It's the circumference, it's this tracing that holds everything, supports everything inside of it. So it's actually this, the ring of Saturn, containing all of these other cycles that are happening inside. So I think the point there is that Saturn is not, Saturn as the father or that archetype is not the center. And maybe there's no such thing. Maybe this whole reading is about getting us to stop circling ourselves by decentralizing one particular point of view or our particular experience, or a fixed notion of trajectory or direction. If we decentralize those things, what we get is eccentric circles. What we get is the spirograph design. What we get is a little bit more freedom, but also a lot more interconnection. When we are not moving in these very isolated, singular circle patterns, but rather we have the freedom to intersect with one another and to create a more ornate design like the spirograph. Not only is it stronger and more interesting, but it's much more free. Maybe Sag is encouraging Aquarius to remember that there is so much security in the freedom that you find in going off script. And feeling those circles collide and intersect in unique and unexpected ways. Okay. Enter the priestess, who says, yeah, the mystery is everything. The mystery is where the magic is. Concentric circles are more predictable, which can give the illusion of security. Maybe Sag is helping Aquarius to feel security from or within a more chaotic energy. Because here we are in a world that is dealing with a global pandemic and suddenly got a lot less predictable. Not that it ever necessarily was, but I know for me, I certainly feel the chaos suddenly, that anything could happen in unexpected ways and that I can't really rely on anything anymore. And that feels super insecure. It does. Maybe you're feeling that way too. But I think this is just an opportunity to reframe what we find, or like what we take as security, or how we find security, how we feel secure. I'm thinking about how fluidly the spirograph moves as opposed to the compass, which is like trace, trace, right? Like change the angle, trace around, change the angle, trace around. I mean, there's something very satisfying in that, like predictable, repetitive motion. And then there's something very fluid and interesting and wild in the spirograph, and the way it emerges as you trace it out. You know, like you can't necessarily know what design you're creating, and the motion itself is incredibly dynamic and fluid, and it takes you on a ride. Because you have to some degree, give yourself over to the mystery in order to see the beauty that's available on the other side. Okay. I mean, you've got two heavy hitters like Sagittarius and Aquarius. You know it's not going to be a casual conversation. Y'all went totally existential, and I'm here for it. I love it. Thanks for sharing your energy, Sag and Aquarius. I hope you both found this useful, and happy full moon.